Welcome to how to build a component-based Drupal site with stacks. My name is Dan Nisley. I'm here with Shane Jeffers from the Brick Factory. And we're excited to kind of show you all here stacks. This is our first ever webinar for stacks, and excited to get the feedback and kind of show it to everyone here. As a background on the Brick Factory, it's a full-service web development agency, primarily focused on Drupal. We've been working on the stacks module for a couple of years now. Kind of stemmed from a recurring problem that we saw with our client sites, where they needed to build complex pages on the fly, and we really were spending a lot of development time, recreating this functionality that we could really kind of pull out into these components, these widgets, and build these pages. So we found that this module stacks has really kind of cut down on our development time. It's really improved the content admin experience, and so as we began to use this a little bit more on our client sites, we realized that this would be really valuable to release to the full Drupal community. So with that, we're really excited to show it to you. We'd love your feedback. And at this point, I'll turn it over to Shane. He runs the front-end team at Brick Factory, and he's been instrumental in building stacks and kind of implementing it on our client sites. So turn it over to you, Shane.
Hey, everyone. Glad you all are here. As Dan said, I'm Shane Jeffers. I'm the lead, front-end lead at the Brick Factory. And basically today, we're going to do a brief demo of an example site that we built with stacks, specifically for DrupalCon. So this is kind of we're kind of building on top of the demo that we did at DrupalCon, which was kind of higher level, showing some of the admin experience. I'm going to get into today a little bit more about how to create new widgets, get a little bit into Twig, and kind of take it from there. So we're also going to have a Q&A time at the end. So if you, during the presentation, if you've got questions, feel free to write them down. There's also a chat feature in here that you can add there, and we will, we'll take a look at those and try to answer those at the end. It also has an audio feature, so if you'd like to ask a question over audio, you can ask a question at the end. Cool. All right. Let me put my slideshow here. So here's the agenda. I'm going to give a technical explanation of stacks, kind of to give you a background of what the technology that we're using in our module. And then I'm going to show you the demo site. And then, like I said, we're going to create a new widget, and we're also going to create a theme variation of that widget if we have time. I hope we do. I'm going to try to talk fast, but still make it readable. Okay, so our stacks module that our team built is heavily dependent upon the module called inline entity form, which really all it is, everything in Drupal 8 is an entity. So whether it's a content type or any kind of entity, like a block or anything. And what inline entity form does is it allows us to take the entity form where you add your fields, where you add content, and it allows us to embed that form in line directly on a node edit page, for example, or within a field. So the way stacks works is it's a field type. So if you want to include it in your site, you just add it like you would a normal text field, right? It's just called a stacks field. So you would add that to your content type, and then you would then you're good to go from there. And we also dependencies. We also have field group and chosen. We use chosen for it's a JS library that gives you some really powerful like searching for select lists and some other cool options, and good for cross-browser compatibility with select lists. So we're using this on in the back end of our stacks admin. Okay, so a little bit about the theme system. So the way this works, we've kind of got some terminology to nail down here, and what we call the upper level is the widget, and in reality, that's an entity. So that means it has fields, headlines, whatever it is, select lists. It could be a text area, kind of like a content type normally would be. So that basically houses the data structure. The widget itself houses the data structure. And then what Stacks allows us to do is separate. So that's the data store portion of it. And then we move into the templating, which basically the widget feeds that data down into a Twig template. And then that Twig template decides, how do I display this data? So as you can see here, this widget in this example has two templates. So maybe one template decides to show 3 fields from the widget itself, and then the other one decides to just show 1. It makes it really granular and easy to for the client or site builder, whatever, to change this on the fly and to get really immersive templates. Then beyond that, there's a third level. So actually, let me step back. The templates themselves are Twig, right? They're HTML and they're Twig Twig tags. And then the next level is the variations, or what we call theme variation of each template. So in this example, we've got 2 variations for each template. What the theme variation does is simply apply a class to the wrapper of the widget itself. So when you're doing theme variations, you're thinking in terms of only making changes that CSS can do, right? So I'm going to make the text white. I'm going to alter the background color, or do those both at the same time. Really, anything you can do with CSS, you can add as a variation, because like I said, all it is applying a class to the wrapper. So overall, that is kind of the hierarchy of the theme system. We also have this kind of side note thing, which we call grouping widgets. So this is kind of hard to explain abstractly, but once we get into the code and you start seeing some things, I'll be able to provide a better explanation. But basically what it allows you to do is to group certain widgets. So let's say you create an entity that has 4 fields on it, and you're going to call it a call to action, right? And then you have another widget, but you have 3 different fields that you want it to be 3 different. You have 3 different fields that you're going to add to this new widget. But when the client goes to add these, you want to categorize them under call to action. Well, this is what grouping allows you to do. Instead of having one call to action with 9 fields, right? You've got 2 widgets, and then you can split the fields. And what the grouping allows you to do is to group those so that the client can get to those under the same grouping. It makes it easier for them to get at it quickly. It also allows you to cut down on the amount of conditional logic within your templates. If I had one template with 9 fields, but for one variation, I was completely getting rid of 4 of the fields, then I have to do if statements and things like that in Twig to handle that, and it can get nasty pretty quickly. So being able to group these widgets and use the fields that you want, it's a big plus. So then we get to templates. The templates themselves, the Twig templates, are Drupal inspired naming conventions. So for the first one here, you see we've got machine name of the widget, and then we've got --default.html.twig. So we've built in this default keyword, which essentially tells Stacks that, hey, this is the default template. So when they load up the node and they go to add a widget of this type, it will default to this template. And then the second bullet point, you've got machine name -- variation. So then this will obviously override. It'll give you another variation. So you could You could change the grid in this variation, or something like that. Something that you're going to change the Twig variables or the layout of the page, that per variation, that's what that allows you to do. We also have these italicized options are not yet pushed to the beta module yet on Drupal.org, but they're coming. And these are cool because it allows you at a page level to check to see if a certain widget is on this page. And if it is, then, change the template, change the page level template. So that's pretty cool. So one of the really cool features about Stacks, and one of my favorites, and it's just not out there right now, is that we allow the site builders or the front end editors to be able to add these preview images so that the client, when they go to add content, they're like, oh yeah, that's the one I want right there, the one I want to fight to save the polar bear. So they choose that option, and it's really visual, right? They don't have to look at they don't even have to look at the language and see what it means. We're not dealing with just with language here. They get to visually see it, so that's really cool. And it follows a similar naming convention. So you got default.jpg, that's going to be the default template, right? And then you've got the default variation, same as the template at the top. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. I did this slide wrong. It should actually be JPEGs, not Twig files, but that's okay. Okay, so that is kind of the overview of the how things are pieced together. So I'm going to switch now into kind of showing the demo a little bit. We did this at DrupalCon, so I won't go too deep into this, but I just want to give you a way to look at the back end, see what the module looks like, and how you kind of edit it from a site builder / client / whatever perspective. So we've got our node here. This is one node, and essentially this entire page is built using widgets. So we've got like a little slider here. We've got a email sign up, and then this section is really cool because this is a sub module that comes with Stacks, and we call it the content feed, and this is actually pulling content from the content type. So this is an article. Each one of these is an article node. And what this is doing is it literally allows the client to say, I want 3 of the latest articles sorted alphabetically. They can make all kinds of changes or select from multiple content types. They can even get granular by selecting a certain taxonomy or multiple taxonomies. So it's really, really flexible. And our clients love that flexibility, being able to add these really immersive widgets to their pages. So, okay, so let's jump in and change a few things. What we're going to do, as an example, I'm going to swap this image to the right. So I'm going to edit the page here. All right, we've got a security update. That's bad news. All right. Okay, so this is the Stacks interface, admin interface, that we spent a good bit of time on trying to make it look good and make it easy for the client to be able to change these things. So as you can see, this over here is the title of the widget, and then this is actually the widget type. So you can see what this is made of. We've got a call to action type. We've got a content feed, which is what I was just mentioning earlier. I'm going to edit this basic text one, so I'm going to hit edit here, and it takes me directly into the widget. And here's the paragraph text. I've got a media image field there attached, and then I've added this select option, which just aligns it left or right. So I'm going to go ahead and swap this just to show you as an example. save, update the widget, and then save the page. All right, and then when I scroll down, there we go, it's updated. So this is one way to edit an existing widget. The other way is we actually built in this thing that we like to call front-end editing. It's sort of front-end editing, but not in terms of like Drupal inline editing. But when you click Edit Widget here, you get a pop-up in a modal, and as you notice, this is the same exact node form or entity form. So I can just align this back, and I hit Save, and Ajax updates the page immediately. So that's really cool, and you can do this kind of editing on any widget. So that's very cool. So let me go through adding a widget. So let's add an email sign up widget. I'm going to scroll to the bottom, and I'm going to click Add New Widget. And you've got some options here. I'm going to choose the widget type to be call to action. And see, I get my nice thumbnails here. So I'm going to call this call out 1. Also notice the check mark here. This is actually verifying that the machine name isn't currently used. So it allows you to kind of track that. Okay, so, and I'm going to choose the light version because I want this blue. And I'm going to give it a headline. I'm going to throw in some. Let's cut that down. All right, and I'm not going to add an image. I'm just going to add this here, and I'm going to save the page. All right, so we scroll down, and now we've got this nice widget that gets added in. And we've got our email sign up, and really super simple and nice for the client. So that's really cool. So that's basically an overview of the editing experience. Now we're going to jump into creating a new widget, and we're going to create what we call a donate widget. So let me show you very briefly what we're doing here. So this portion of code right here is what we're going to be creating. This is the HTML for just a really simple widget. I wanted to keep it simple, so it was easy to follow. So I'm going to save this. This is actually going to be output at the bottom here. So let's refresh. Okay, so this little bar is what we're going to be creating. It's got an enter amount, submit. For simplicity, this is just a standard input and standard inputs. It's not hooked up to a form or anything. So anyway, that's what we're creating. I'm going to go ahead and comment this out because we don't want that there. But let's say we want our clients to be able to add this donation bar to any page. So the first thing you have to do is we want the fields within this area to be editable by the client. So we need to create it as an entity. So what we're going to do is go up to Structure, Stacks. We've got our own little section here. And then Manage Widget Bundles is where we're going to go. And this basically houses all of our widgets. So I'm going to add a widget entity type, and I'm going to call it donate. Okay, and notice here we also have this advanced configuration, which there's a content feed option because we've got some special programming that happens if it's a content feed. But for now, we're doing a simplistic widget, so we're just going to do default. So I'm going to save this. Okay, so now as you can see, we've got donate in our list here. So what we're going to do now is add a few fields. So we're going to go, this is like standard Drupal adding fields to content types. So I'm going to try to do this as quickly as I can. But we're going to add just a text field called title. I'm going to alter the machine name. We're basically going to add 3 text fields, title, placeholder, and then the submit button text. So I'm going to require the field just for kicks. Right. And I'm just keeping the default settings for these text fields, nothing special. I'm going to require that one as well. And then lastly, let's do button text. Call it donate button. Okay. So now that we've got our 3 fields on the content type, as soon as this is done, I'm going to require this, and then we're going to jump over to the manage form display, which is basically just showing how this is going to, what the order of the fields will be when it gets loaded via the inline entity form. So we've got title, placeholder. I'm okay with these, so I'm just going to click save and be okay with that. Okay, so now now Drupal knows about our widget, our new entity that we've created, but we don't have any kind of template attached to it. So what we're going to do is go down. I'm going to open Sublime, my text editor, and we're going to basically create our new stack widget. So as you can see, this is Bricklet is my theme folder. So in Drupal 8, you've got themes and then your theme folder. So we've got some things in here like Sass. We've got our images, our Drupal templates, things like that, our style guide. So what you do is create a stacks folder within your theme, and that's where all of your widget templates will live. So inside of stacks, you can see we've got some already here, and these are what are making up the demo site that you saw. So what I'm going to do is create. I'm going to create a new folder within here called Donate, and then inside of there, this is how Stacks works. We have an images folder which holds your preview images, and then also another folder called templates. So in each one of these widget folders, we've got at least these 2. So the first thing I want to do is I need to create my default template. So inside of my templates folder, I'm going to add a new file, and I'm going to call it, if I can type, default html.twig. So that's going to go inside of my templates folder. There it is. And that's fine for now. So I'm going to open this file. Close some of these out. Okay. So I've got my file here, and then I'm going to pull in my HTML that I showed you at the beginning. So this is basically what makes up my widget. So I'm going to go ahead and save this. And then I'm going to go over and clear Drupal cache. So I'm going to run drush cr, which is cache rebuild in Drupal 8. All right, so the cache is clear. So now that Stacks knows that we have a default template and it's under donate, keep in mind that this donate matches the machine name of our widget. Yes, so once we've done that, we need to, let's go to the content type. So under basic page, essentially the way stacks is set up is it's a field on a content type. So what you can do is if you'd like to have multiple stacks fields, you could have the client only have 4 widgets, be able to add 4 widgets on one content type, but have access to the full library on the other content type. So what this allows you to do is go to structure, content types, basic page. This is the one we're using for our, this is the one that has the stacks field. So we're going to manage the form display. And then we're going to look for our stacks field. Here it is, field stacks. And then you can see here we've got certain enabled stacks. So we're going to click the cog wheel, and you notice that some of these are checked. Donate is not checked because we just added it. So I'm going to check that. There's also here, this is, I'm not going to get into this today, but it's worth noting that this is a pretty powerful feature. It allows you to position lock widgets as well as require widgets with the position that's optional. So you can have a content type that forces the client to always add a certain widget in one position, like first, for example. So that's pretty powerful as well. But like I said, I'm not going to get into that today. But I'm going to go ahead and add this donate and save. Okay, so now what we're going to do is add this donate widget to our page. And the tab here. Hold on, I'll take my headphones. Test, check. Okay, I think it's still working. Can somebody verify in the chat that it's working? Okay, cool. Awesome, thanks guys. All right, so where were we? We were adding it to the page. All right, so let's go ahead and add this to the page. We're gonna click edit on this node. We're gonna scroll down to the bottom, and we're gonna add this donate widget. So the reason that it's showing up in this dropdown is because we just went to manage form display and we enabled it for this content type. So I'm clicking donate. I'm gonna name donate one, and this is my default template. It's the only one there, so I'm okay with that. Let's hit next. I'm gonna give it all right. I will note while I'm here, we've got some developer settings here in this collapsible field set, which basically adds wrapper ID and wrapper classes to the widget. So you can actually add these kind of things to the widget wrapper itself. We'll come back to that. So I'm going to go ahead and just add this information in and add the widget. And you see it gets added to the bottom here. I'm actually going to move it up one because I think it looks better in the design. So I just move it up, and then I'm going to hit save. Notice how fast this is. It's pretty quick editing experience, and I have what 10 widgets on this page. Some even returning dynamic data, so it's very fast from a performance standpoint. So I'm going to scroll down, and boom, we have our new donation bar widget. But notice that this is not the content we entered just a second ago. I named the donation button donate, not submit. So let's go back to our template. And I'm sure you guys can guess why. We've got this data hard-coded into this template. So the next thing we want to do is check out how we can add our Twig variables to this template. So we use something called Kent, which basically allows you to print out the array of data that you're receiving. So I know for a fact that the fields are accessible using this fields array. So I'm going to save this and refresh the page. And here we go. I get this nice little array here that's easy to read and digest. So basically what this is telling me is I can access this just by doing fields dot whatever the field name is. So what I'm going to do is jump back. I'm going to comment this out because we don't need it anymore. So I'm going to get rid of this and I'm going to replace it with fields dot field donate. No, this is the title. And I'm going to copy in the placeholder. And then the value of the submit button, just for fun. All right. So now instead of having that data hard coded, we've got the data coming from Drupal. So when I save this, I refresh the page. There we go. We've got our dynamic. Okay, so one thing. Let's go back and edit this very quickly. So I mentioned earlier that we have this ID section in the developer settings here. We've got ID and we've got wrapper classes. Well, I'm going to go ahead and add something here. Donate, and I'm going to say donate, please. All right, so we're adding an ID here, and then we're appending this to the class attribute. So I'm going to hit update and save. Okay. So now when we go down and we right click, inspect this, I'm going to pull this over, and this is our widget wrapper, but it didn't work. I don't see an ID and I don't see the new class. So I did something wrong, right? So let me reference one of my other widgets. So I'm going to go to my call to action widget and I'm going to open this call to action widget. Oh, shoot. Okay, I missed all this stuff. So one thing you have to do is we've got basically three custom Twig variables. One which is wrapper ID, which clearly is pulling in the ID. We've got this wrapper classes variable, and then we've got the template theme variable. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this and I'm going to move this over to my widget. I'm going to put it here. And then we're going to just add in space. Okay. Now, if you're familiar with Twig, there is absolutely a way to create a base widget, right, that contains all of this information, and then use you can use blocks in Twig to then update the content in the middle. We've done that on a lot of projects, so we don't have to reuse this information. And then we've actually created this class here as a custom block, and then in the new template you just pass whatever class you want it to grab. So all right, so now we've added those dynamic variables. We're going to come in and we're going to refresh, inspect it now, and there we go. So we've got our donate ID and then our new classes. A thing to note here is we're automatically appending contextual region when this is added to the page. When the wrapper underscore classes variable is automatically appending that, and that's because we're using Drupal's kind of default contextual region styling to do our quick edit. So as you notice here, if I hover over this blue area, you notice I get this little edit widget thing, but when I'm over here, I don't. That's because it uses the title suffix in order to output those contextual links, and that's something that Drupal does by default. So I do have that in my other template, so I'm going to go grab that, and I'm just going to pull it in. So here's my title suffix, and I'm going to drop that in right there. I'm going to save this. I'm going to refresh. We should have our link. There we go. So I'm going to edit this widget. Let me clear the cache. I might have missed something. Anyway, let's edit it from here for the time being. All right, so I'm going to add my text in. This is the proper title. This is the proper title. There we go. All right. Then we're gonna add. We'll leave that. That's fine. Donate. Okay. So we're just changing the title. We're gonna update that. Okay. So now 100% of your donations are going directly to me. So that's awesome. Okay. So now we've created this widget. We've injected dynamic content from the entity. So now what we're going to do is create a second template. Okay. So we've got this one template that displays them kind of in line. They're both in a 6 column. If you look at the HTML here, we've got basically for the medium breakpoint, we've got 6 columns. So it's separating it into 6 evenly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the donate folder and I'm going to create a new template called centered. I can't spell. Okay. So now I've got that template, and what I'm going to do is copy this. We're going to copy our default template. We're going to drop it in here. One thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a new class called centered. Okay. And just for kicks, let me kind of show you what's happening here. So this is my donate component, and this is in Sass. This is a partial, so it's being brought into the main CSS file. This is very rudimentary CSS, by the way. This was done quickly for the demo, so don't judge. So we've got donate here, and then this is kind of adding some margin. We've got the styling for the input, and then we have a global margin bottom on most elements. So this is removing that for to make the inline look proper. And then basically with the centered option here, we're adding the margin back because it just looks better when it's shown the way we're about to show it. So what I'm going to do basically here is get rid of these medium columns, which is going to make these columns go all the way across, be 12 across the grid. And this centered class is basically just removing, or I'm sorry, adding the margin back to make it look better. So the other thing we could do here is remove a field, right? So let's say this template, I don't want this field at all to show. I could, in theory, just remove this, and that would be my second template. But in this case, I'm going to just do it visually, and I'm going to break these down onto 2 lines. So I've saved this. I'm going to clear the cache. It's a new Twig template. Okay. And then I'm going to edit the page. Okay, I'm going to click edit, and there we go. So now, just from adding that Twig file and clearing the cache, Stacks has recognized that there's a new template. So I'm going to switch over to the centered template. I'm going to hit next. And I don't want to change any of the data. I actually want the data the same. So I'm going to hit update and save the page. Okay, so we're going to scroll down and wow, look at that. I mean, come on, that's cutting edge. We now have it on 2 lines. That's just amazing. So again, this is a simplistic example, but literally, like you could, anything you can do in Twig, you can alter these templates. So there's endless possibilities of what you can do. So now we've got our new template. So this allows the client to easily pick between these two, which is really cool. And so I'm going to go ahead and, now that you've seen that, I'm going to go ahead and switch back to our default template. I'm going to edit this, switch back, update the widget, save the page. All right, so we're back to our inline version here. Now what I'm going to do is I talked a little bit about, in the slides, I talked a little bit about adding the images. So I'm going to do that now. So in our donate folder, we have an images folder, which is empty currently. And I'm going to drop a few images in there that I created. We're going to drop these in. Okay. Right now, the only ones that are pertinent are the default.jpg, which you can see is here. And the cool thing about this is you can have your designers create this. So this could be a deliverable from design to front end, so that design has a say in it. Or you could let your front end developers create it. That's up to you. And then we've got our centered. So this is the default template, and this is the centered. Now notice the names match. So that's important. There's a naming convention, it has to match. These other two are actually theme variations of the default. So we'll get to that. If I think, I don't know if we'll have time, we'll see. So yes, so what we're gonna do is clear the cache one more time because we added our images. And we're gonna edit the page. We're gonna scroll down, and then now when we edit, we get this richer experience. So now they can see, okay, this one, maybe my images aren't the best representation, but because you kind of can't tell. But you could alter this. Design would do a better job of showing that this is in line. And then we've got one that's kind of centered and on 2 lines. So yeah, that's basically how you create multiple templates. And as you can see, they're separate Twig files. So you can do all kinds of things with that. I think we can do it. I think we got 5. I don't know. What do you think, Dan?
The first question we have is about variations. So why don't you dive in and show them the 2 variations as well?
Okay. Okay. Yeah, absolutely. So there's a couple of different ways that you can alter the look of content within a widget. For example, in this call to action section that I showed you, let me get here. Is it not the call to action? Can't remember. Is it this one? No, it's not. I'm sorry. It's the basic text. Cool. So it's this one here. So there's a couple different ways you can do it. Oh, my local is failing me. Refresh. Okay. So I'm going to edit this one. So there's a couple different ways. This is actually a field on the entity. So you can do multiple things. I could have this select list basically just passes a class to the Twig template, and then the Twig template acts on that variable. So there's that. You can do that, and really the options are limitless here. You're essentially just passing a variable to the Twig template, which you then act upon. So looking at this, what do we call it? Yes, this is the default template. No, why do I keep going to the call out? Oh. Oh, okay. Basic text, sorry, not basic page. So this is essentially what it's doing. It's looking for this. Actually, this one's checking for the image URL, but this one here is basically doing the check. So if this field and it's looking for the markup, which outputs the string. So it's comparing the string versus what's in this in these quotes. If it is, then output it like this. If it's not, then output it like that. You can do that in multiple different ways, and it can be a text field, it can be a select list, it can be whatever, and then inside of Twig, you basically react on that. So this is how you do it inside of the widget itself. So if you want them to be able to add that in the widget itself, this is how you would do it. It's kind of like paragraphs is kind of like that. Like if you want to make a tweak to something within it, you just have to have a bunch of options inside of the thing itself, you know. But we have another option, which let me do this real quick, which is what we call our theme variations. So this is in stacks.settings.yaml, which is a config file that gets generated when you enable Stacks and you export your config. It creates this file. So what we're going to do is I'm going to add in a few variations here. So I'm just going to update this YAML, and I added these in. So basically what this is saying is this is my machine name widget, the machine name of my widget, donate, and then the default template. And then this is basically a class string. So I've got this in my CSS. And then this is just, the label of what it's going to show like. But actually, before I do this, because I almost made this mistake, is in order to do this, you need to import config. So you actually have to, in order to keep the changes that we made, I need to export first. So I'm going to export all of these changes that I made using drush cex. And then now those changes are in, so I can safely add this back. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And then what I need to do is to import those changes that I just made. And you'll see that there you go, stack setting needs to be updated. So I hit yes, and boom, now I've got those. So watch this. In theory, let me just clear cache just in case. I'm going to reload this edit page. I was clearing cache, so it was going slow. And then my donate. Oh, I named it wrong. I named the image wrong. But let me see. Add. I don't know what I did there. I must have messed it up somehow. But anyway, so these are the images that you get. So this is being dictated by this stacks YAML file. So what ends up happening is in my Twig template, which is back here, our default template, this template theme variable basically gets passed whatever this value is. So this is why I said earlier when you're doing a theme variation, you want to only do things that will affect CSS, because basically all we're doing here is passing this string into this variable, which outputs it in the classes area. So you can act on it, act upon it with CSS. And these are unlimited. You can add as many as you want. So if I had, so this was the default variation, but I did create a second template. So I could do centered, because that was the machine name of my other one, and I could do it like that, whatever. I could put whatever I want in here, which is really cool. And the cool thing about it is you can have the image attached, which shows them exactly what it looks like. So that's awesome. So that is basically it in a nutshell. There's a few other things that that you can get into. Like I was mentioning earlier, the grouping. The grouping comes into play when, in this case, like we want the same fields for both of these variations. So it makes sense for them to be grouped in a donate widget, right? But let's say, you know, we want a totally separate look and feel for this one. Then that's when we would create two separate entities. So instead of just creating one donate entity, we would create donate this underscore or donate underscore whatever, donate underscore two. And then you could group them via this YAML file. So in the stack settings, we have widget type groups. So in this case, I would say something like donate, equals donate. So then any widget that's created that begins with this machine name will be grouped under this donate section. So it's really nice, and you can categorize things nicely for the client. So yeah, that wrapping it up, I try to go as quickly as possible, but that's about all I have. I thank you guys all for coming. I hope it was informational and that you'll be able to take some of this and use it. Also, obviously, this is to get you guys to try the Stacks module and contribute to it. We want people to find this helpful and to use it for themselves. We're also here to help on stack-based projects. So contact the Brick Factory and get in contact with us and let us help. And also look out for future webinars. This is our first one, my first one. So any feedback would be great. But yeah, so that's basically it. Stacks in a nutshell, and this is how we build 95% of our client work, and they're loving it. So yeah, that's all I have, guys. So I'm gonna go ahead and open it up for a question.
Shane, one thing that would be worthwhile to go over maybe is how you can incorporate stacks into an existing Drupal site.
Yeah, absolutely. So stacks is like I said at the beginning, it's a field type, so it really can be added anywhere. You could have you could in theory add stacks to the bottom of a current node and just allow your client to add widgets underneath their current content. Um, that would be the easiest way to incorporate it into an existing site. Otherwise, you would create a new content type and with a stacks field, and you would go on. You would create the widgets and then start allowing them to add pages in this component-based way. And you can even recreate some of the views you probably used to allow them to be able to change and edit that the way that displays. So we have a question here. Have you guys tried it with Pattern Lab? Something like Emulsify, if you're familiar with it. I'm not familiar with Emulsify, but absolutely. I mean, it would work with Pattern Lab. We use like a SMAX. I don't know if you've heard of that, but kind of approach to building out component based things. and we use oh my gosh, I'm going crazy. I can't remember the style. Hologram. We use Hologram as a style guide generator. So that's kind of like our pattern lab. We create. Uh, it's a dynamically generated style guide from source code within the SAS. Um, but yeah, absolutely. I mean, the great thing about this is it's Twig templates. So you can literally you have full control. Doesn't matter what you use. I knew I was going to get this question. So, as Dan said in the background, we get a lot of questions about paragraphs and kind of the parallels between them. We did create a blog post um, on our site about it, but I think in general, I think you can look at this admin experience and see the image previews and the templating system and stuff like that, and just see that we've put a lot more emphasis on what the client sees, um, and that's super important to us. Like that was our goal going in, and I feel like we achieve that better than paragraphs. Yeah, I mean, in theory, it's added the same way to the page, and things may look similar, um, but I mean, there's some differences. Like I just mentioned, the templating system, the image previews. Just recently, paragraphs got the ability to add a paragraph type, or sorry, a paragraph instance to multiple nodes. Well, we've had that. You know what I mean? We wanted the ability to be able to reuse the widgets, content widgets that we create on multiple pages. Now, the paragraphs did just get a contributed module for that. So there's some. I'm trying to think of any other things off the top of my head. Um, but I mean, the thing about it is, man, the biggest thing for us is, try it out. Give paragraphs a shot. I mean, a lot of people like paragraphs, and that's fantastic. I mean, we think it's a great module. Um, but we found that we feel like we're going in kind of a different direction. Like it's almost like paragraphs is kind of going to replace field collection, but we're more of like we're trying to fill the gap of the overall admin experience in the node editor. Um, so that's kind of the, the thought process. And we've got some things like personalization. We want to be able to like track where the user's going and be able to put in a widget that is dynamically based on the personalization or the track that they followed. So some things like that we're looking into, and A/B testing and things like that. So yeah, hopefully that answers the question. Any other questions before we close it up?
I think that should do it, Shane.
All right, awesome. Well, again, thank you guys for coming, and let us know, give us some feedback, and we hope to see you guys soon.